The waitress had asked if we were celebrating anything. It was a Tuesday. We were not celebrating anything. We were at our usual booth at the usual place, with the usual order already in. Her with the eggs she always got and the hot sauce she always requested and the small stack of napkins she always took more of than she needed. I was going to say no. Just lunch. I was going to say it the way I had said it every other Tuesday for 2 years. What I said was, her birthday is next week. Trying to get ahead of it, and the waitress smiled and looked at Maya and said, "Your husband is so thoughtful." And I said, "I try," before the word husband had finished landing in the air between us. Maya looked at me. I looked at her. I started. "Don't you dare take it back," she said. Her face had gone the color of the hot sauce. She was looking at me with an expression I had never seen before, which was remarkable because I had been looking at her face for 6 years and thought I had catalogued all of them. She was not embarrassed. She was not amused. She was something I didn't have a word for yet, but recognized immediately, the way you recognize a song you've never consciously learned. The waitress left. The diner made its usual sounds. We sat in a booth that felt substantially smaller than it had 30 seconds ago, and neither of us said anything for a long time. My name is Owen Harte. I'm 32. I teach secondary school English, which means I spend most of my professional life trying to convince teenagers that the words people choose are the most important thing about them. That what you say and what you mean, and the gap between those two things, is where all the interesting stuff lives. I am aware of the irony of a man with this specific job spending 6 years not saying the most important thing. Her name is Maya Callum. 31. She's a landscape architect who designs public parks and green spaces for a city council that underfunds her department and over-relies on her patience. She is very good at making things grow in difficult conditions. I have always thought that was not just a professional skill. We met because she moved into the flat below mine 6 years ago and knocked on my door to ask if I owned a French press, because hers was still in a box somewhere and she needed coffee immediately. I lent her the French press. She returned it 3 days later with a note that said, "Cleaned it. Also, you're out of good coffee. Also, thank you." The note used my name even though I hadn't told her my name yet. She'd asked the landlord. I found this unreasonably endearing and have never recovered. The friendship built itself the way good ones do, through proximity, then habit, then something that became structural. She is the person I call when something goes wrong and the person I want to tell when something goes right. And for a long time I treated those two facts as evidence of a very good friendship rather than evidence of anything else. This was convenient. It was also, as it turns out, completely wrong. The diner is our Tuesday ritual. It started because we both happened to be free on a Tuesday 2 years into the friendship, and we both happened to be near the same neighborhood, and she texted and said, "Diner?" And I said yes. And the Tuesday after that it happened again, and at some point it stopped being coincidence and became the thing we did. We have the same booth when it's available. She always takes too many napkins. She always asks for hot sauce, even though the table already has some. I have never commented on either of these things because they are just Maya, and Maya is not something I have ever wanted to comment on. Maya is something I have wanted to be near. Her prop is a small enamel pin on her jacket. A tiny tree. A detail from a park she designed 2 years ago. A project she was proud of. She bought the pin to market. She wears it every time she wears that jacket, which is most days. I noticed it in month 1 of the pin's existence and said nothing, because saying things about small details on someone's jacket requires a justification for why you noticed, and the justification was something I wasn't ready to hand over. I told myself, for 2 years of Tuesdays, that this was friendship. I was technically correct. I was also in the way of people who choose their words very carefully, using accuracy as a hiding place. The week before the diner, her birthday had come up because she'd mentioned it herself, offhand, in the way she mentioned things she didn't want to make a fuss about. "It's next Tuesday," she'd said. "Which means our diner falls on my actual birthday for once." "We should do something," I said. "We do something every Tuesday," she said. Something more. She had looked at me with the expression she uses when she's deciding whether to be practical or to let something in. She usually chose practical. It was faster. "Just be there," she said. That's the something. I thought about that sentence for the rest of the week, in the way I thought about things she said that seemed simple and turned out not to be. I had also, by that point, spent approximately 3 weeks in a state I can only describe as a man who has been circling something for 2 years and has recently realized he has been circling it because he is afraid to land. The circling itself was the evidence. You don't circle things that don't matter. There were smaller things before the Sunday that I had filed away without examining them properly. There was a Friday in September when a colleague at school, Robbie, who means well and lacks spatial awareness, had mentioned that he was planning to ask out a woman in the council planning office. He described her briefly: landscape architect, dark hair, wore a pin on her jacket, always seemed to know exactly what she thought before she'd finished thinking it. I had said, very calmly, that I didn't think she was seeing anyone, and Robbie had looked at me with the specific expression of someone who has just received slightly more information than they asked for. I spent the rest of the afternoon marking essays I could not remember marking. There was a Wednesday in October when I had been at a dinner party at a colleague's house, and someone had asked, around the table, who was the last person you texted. I had said Maya's name before the question finished. The table had made the sound tables make when they think they know something. I had said we were friends. The table had made the sound tables make when they have decided not to argue. There was a Thursday in November when she had called me, not texted, called, which she did only for things she didn't want to edit. And she'd said her project review had gone badly, and the committee had asked for revisions that she thought were wrong, and she needed to say that to someone who wouldn't tell her she was being difficult. I had listened for an hour. When she finished, she said, "Thank you. I feel like myself again." And I had thought, quietly and without planning to, that I wanted to be the person who did that. For a long time, for all the time she needed it. I hadn't said that either. I had said the committee is wrong, by the way, and she had laughed and hung up, and I had sat with it for 3 weeks. The thing that finally made it undeniable was a Sunday 6 weeks before the diner. We had been at her flat, working through a documentary series we'd been watching in installments, and she had fallen asleep on the other end of the sofa somewhere in episode 4. I'd turned the volume down. I'd sat there for 20 minutes watching a documentary I was no longer watching, and at some point I had understood, with the quiet certainty of something that had actually been true for a long time, that this was where I wanted to be. Not just this sofa on this Sunday. This person. This specifically. I hadn't said anything. I'd let her sleep. I'd thought about it for 6 weeks, and then gone to the diner on a Tuesday and said my wife by accident, which is a very English teacher way to discover that you've been carrying something in plain sight. The diner was doing its usual Tuesday business around us. A family in the corner, 2 women sharing a pot of tea near the window, the sound of the kitchen at its usual pace. Someone 2 booths over was laughing at something on their phone. The world was entirely uninterested in what had just happened in our booth, which felt both unreasonable and correct. Maya was looking at her coffee cup. I was looking at her coffee cup. She had not taken it back, the "don't you dare." She had said it, and then she had looked at the table and gone quiet. And I had looked at the table and gone quiet. And we had both been quiet for long enough that the waitress had come back, assessed us, and quietly retreated without the order she'd come for. I catalogued this as a data point and said nothing. Her fingers were around the cup, but she wasn't drinking it. She had the expression she gets when she's working something out in her mind, the landscape architect's expression, the one that means she's looking at something and figuring out where it fits and what grows best in it. I watched her do this. I had been watching her do this for 6 years from various distances, and from approximately 3 feet away across a diner table. It was the most absorbing thing I had ever tried not to stare at. "You said I try," she said. "I know," I said. "You didn't say you meant to say something else. I know that too." She turned the cup in her hands once. Set it flat. "Owen," she said. "I know," I said, a third time. Completely useless. She looked up. Her face had settled back to something even. Not the blush, not the expression I'd seen for 30 seconds before she'd had time to manage it, but something thoughtful and careful and still slightly pink at the edges, which I catalogued without meaning to. "How long?" she said. I thought about lying. I thought about qualifying. I am an English teacher. I know what it costs to say the inaccurate thing. "A while," I said. "How long is a while?" "A couple of years," I said. Roughly, she absorbed that. She had the expression she gets when she's received information she needs to map onto something she already knows, not surprised, exactly, recalculating. 2 years of Tuesdays, she said. "Give or take," I said. She was quiet for a moment. "I have poor instincts," I said, "for saying the things I mean when the stakes feel high. Apparently I require an audience and a birthday and an accidental noun." Her mouth moved, not quite a smile. Something that was deciding whether to be one. "You're very good at saying things matter when you're talking about books," she said. "Books are easier," I said. "The author already did the work." "What would the author say," she said, "if this were a book?" I looked at her across the table. The enamel pin was on her jacket. The small tree, slightly worn at the edges now, 2 years of daily wear. The project she'd been proud of. I had been watching it for 2 years without saying why I noticed. The author, I said, would probably point out that the protagonist has been treating friendship as a synonym for something he didn't have a different word for yet. And that the word arrived in a diner on a Tuesday, and he didn't say it wrong. He just said it early. She looked at me for a long moment. "Early," she said. "If that's," I started. "Owen," she said. "Yes, stop leaving yourself exits." I closed my mouth. She reached across the table. Her hand landed on mine, not holding it, just covering it. Warm, deliberate, the way she did things that mattered. "I changed my emergency contact 8 months ago," she said quietly. I went still. "The form at the council," she said. "They asked us to update our records, and I opened the form and I put your name in and I stared at it for a while, and then I submitted it without changing it." She paused. "And then I thought about it for about a week, and then I decided to stop thinking about it." "You didn't tell me," I said. "You were my emergency contact," she said. I didn't know what else to say. Something shifted in my chest. Not dramatically. Just into place, the way things settle when they've been slightly wrong for a long time. "Maya," I said. "I know," she said. Which was fair. "When something goes wrong," I said, "you're the person I want to call. When something goes right, still you. It has been you for a long time. I just kept calling it something smaller than it was, because smaller felt safer, and I was wrong about that. I was wrong about what it actually is." She was very still. "What is it actually?" she said. "I think it's the thing where you're my wife," I said. "Accidentally, in a diner. On a Tuesday." She laughed. The real one. Quick and completely unmanaged, the kind that arrived all at once, and her eyes went bright, and she pressed her lips together and looked at the table and then back at me. And she was still pink at the edges, and now she was also smiling, and I understood that I had been looking at her smile for 6 years, and had somehow failed to register that it was the specific thing I was most interested in finding reasons to see. Her hand was still on mine. "I have terrible timing," I said. "It's Tuesday," she said. "It's my birthday week. We're at our booth." She looked around the diner, briefly, at all its usual Tuesday self. "I can't think of better timing. The waitress did most of the work," I said. "She really did," Maya said. "We should tip accordingly," I said. "We absolutely should," she said. Her thumb moved once across the back of my hand. "Small, chosen. Don't take it back," she said. Quiet, the same words as before, but slower this time. No blush, no emergency. Just her saying what she wanted. "I'm not," I said. She turned her hand over and held mine properly, and we sat in the booth in the middle of a Tuesday diner with the usual sounds around us and the usual order on the way, and everything was exactly the same and entirely different, which is the thing about true sentences. Once they're out, they don't leave the room. 3 months later, when her colleague Dara asked if she was seeing anyone, Maya said yes, and Dara asked where they'd met, and Maya said downstairs. Dara assumed a bar. Maya let her. She told me that evening, and I said that was almost accurate, depending on your definition of downstairs, and she said, "Don't be pedantic," and I said, "I'm an English teacher, it's structural," and she threw a napkin at me, which is something she had always done and which now had a different valence entirely, and which I found I did not want to stop having happen. In November, she left the enamel pin on my kitchen windowsill. No note. I moved it to my jacket the next day. She noticed and said nothing, which was how I knew it meant something, because Maya always notices and only says nothing about the things that are too important to make small with words. I wear the jacket most days now. 2 years after that, when people asked how we went from friends to this, we both said the same thing, a Tuesday. Her birthday week. The usual booth. And then one of them would say it was Owen who finally said something, and the other would say it wasn't exactly what you'd call planned, and then both of them would be quiet for a moment in the way of people who have the same memory of a thing and are both standing inside it at the same time. She still takes too many napkins. I still don't comment. The hot sauce is still requested even when the table already has some, which it always does, and I still say nothing because it's Maya, and Maya is not something I have ever wanted to comment on. Maya is something I have wanted to be near. I am near her. I plan to stay that way. Nothing about it surprised me when I finally said the word. It had just been true for a while, quietly, in all the usual places, at all the usual times, wearing the shape of something I'd been calling by the wrong name. I'm an English teacher. I should have known sooner that the words we reach for by accident are usually the ones we mean the most.